I criticized my husband in bed, and now our marriage is collapsing in slow motion while everyone tells me I got what I deserved. They think I'm the villain who destroyed a good man's confidence over nothing. What they don't know is that I was desperately trying to save us from something much worse than hurt feelings. My friends stopped answering my calls. My sister told me I'm toxic. Online strangers are calling me every name in the book after my best friend posted a vague status that clearly references me. I'm not just afraid of losing my marriage. I'm terrified of who I've become and trying to save it, and more terrified of what happens when everyone learns the real reason I said what I said. So I'm going to tell you everything, including the part that makes me look even worse than the headline suggests. Because there's a detail I've been hiding that explains why I couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore, and why the truth I told Ryan that night was actually a lie. Let me start with how good things used to be because that context matters. Ryan and I met 6 years ago at a marketing conference in Austin. He was giving a presentation on brand authenticity, and I remember thinking he had this quiet confidence that drew everyone in. Not arrogant, just sure of himself. That same energy carried into everything else. Our physical connection was intense from the beginning. He was attentive in bed, present, enthusiastic. We'd spend entire weekends tangled up together, ordering takeout at midnight because we'd forgotten to eat. My previous relationships had been fine in that department, adequate, but Ryan made me feel desired in a way I hadn't experienced before. I felt lucky. We got married after 2 years. The wedding was perfect, small ceremony in his parents' backyard, just close family and friends. I wore a simple dress I found at a vintage shop. Ryan cried during his vows. I thought I'd found my person, the one who'd make everything else in life make sense. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, like everyone says. We moved into a new apartment, combined our finances, learned each other's annoying habits, but the physical side stayed strong. If anything, the familiarity made it better. We knew what each other liked. There was comfort and passion in equal measure. Then around year 4 I started noticing changes, small things at first. Ryan seemed distracted sometimes, like his mind was elsewhere. The frequency dropped off a bit, which I told myself was normal. We were busy with work, stressed about money, dealing with his mother's health scare. Life gets in the way, that's what married couples always say, but it wasn't just frequency. The quality shifted too. He'd finish quickly, then apologize and roll over. Or he'd struggle to maintain focus, lose his momentum halfway through. I tried to be understanding, reassuring him it was fine, that I wasn't worried about it. Because I wasn't, not really, not at first. I suggested we set aside dedicated time, make it a priority. We tried scheduling date nights, recreating our early relationship energy. Sometimes it worked. More often, we'd end up watching Netflix and falling asleep on the couch. The scheduled intimacy felt forced, performative in a way that killed whatever spontaneity we had left. Still, I told myself this was just a phase. All marriages go through dry spells. My married friends hinted at similar issues when we'd had enough wine. It was normal, we'd get through it. What I didn't tell anyone was that I'd started feeling unwanted, rejected. Like maybe the problem was me, maybe I'd gained weight, maybe I wasn't attractive to him anymore, maybe he'd realized he'd settled. These thoughts would creep in late at night while he slept beside me, oblivious to my spiral. I tried everything I could think of. I bought new lingerie, though it felt ridiculous putting it on only to have him yawn and say he was exhausted. I suggested couples activities to build connection, hiking, cooking classes, even a pottery workshop that I hated. I initiated more, trying to take the pressure off him. Nothing seemed to shift the pattern. Then one night about 8 months ago, I made a decision that felt small at the time. Ryan had fumbled through another disappointing encounter, apologizing again, and instead of reassuring him like usual, I stayed quiet, just rolled onto my side, letting the silence communicate my frustration. He noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said, but my tone said everything. That was the beginning, though I didn't know it then. That tiny withholding of reassurance, that first crack in my supportive facade, I'd opened a door I didn't know how to close. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't hide my disappointment as easily. My body language gave me away, the way I'd stiffen when he reached for me, the forced smile when he suggested we go to bed. Ryan started initiating less, which made sense. Who wants to face potential rejection? We fell into a terrible cycle. The less we connected physically, the more distant we became emotionally. The more distant we became, the worse the physical connection got when we did try. I felt trapped in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside while I was slowly dying of loneliness inside it. I started wondering if this was it, if this was what the rest of my life looked like. My parents had divorced when I was 12. I'd promised myself I'd never put kids through that I'd work on my marriage no matter what. But I also never imagined feeling so unwanted in my own bed. My friend Jessica suggested therapy. I brought it up to Ryan carefully, framing it as something to strengthen our relationship, not fix it. He agreed, which gave me hope. But he kept postponing making the appointment, saying work was crazy, he'd do it next week. Weeks turned into months. I began having thoughts I'm not proud of. When attractive men smiled at me at the coffee shop, I'd smile back a little too long. I found myself dressing nicer for work, enjoying the attention from colleagues. Nothing happened, I never crossed that line, but I was aware of testing boundaries in my mind. Then came the night that changed everything. We'd been at his company's holiday party. I'd worn a dress I knew looked good, had got my hair done. Multiple people complimented me. I felt attractive for the first time in months, visible again. Ryan had a few drinks, which was unusual for him. On the drive home, he was touchy, affectionate like the old days. When we got home, he pulled me toward the bedroom with actual desire in his eyes. Finally, I thought. Finally, we're breaking through this, but it fell apart quickly. He couldn't maintain his focus, got frustrated with himself, and within minutes it was over. He collapsed beside me, mumbling another apology. Something in me snapped. All the months of reassurance, of pretending it was fine, of swallowing my own needs, it erupted. "This isn't working," I said. My voice came out harder than I intended. He froze. "What? This, us in bed, it hasn't been working for months and I can't keep pretending it's okay." I watched his face crumble. Even in my anger, I knew I was crossing a line, but I couldn't stop. "Your performance has been really disappointing," I said. The word disappointing hung in the air between us like poison. "I've been patient, I've been supportive, but nothing's changing. I need you to actually do something about this instead of just apologizing." Ryan sat up, pulling away from me. "You've been keeping score, this whole time you've been judging me." "I'm not judging you, I'm being honest. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? There's a difference between honesty and cruelty." His voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. If he'd yelled, I could have yelled back. But this quiet devastation left me nowhere to go. He got dressed and slept on the couch. I lay in bed, my heart pounding, replaying what I'd said. Part of me felt justified. I had been patient, it was a legitimate problem. But another part knew I delivered it in the worst possible way at the most vulnerable moment. I thought he'd cool off overnight. We'd talk in the morning, I'd apologize for my delivery while maintaining that the issue was real. We'd finally address this problem directly. Instead, Ryan barely spoke to me for days. He was polite, cordial even, but completely shut down, and he stopped touching me entirely. No goodbye kisses, no hand-holding on the couch, nothing. The physical distance I'd been complaining about became a canyon. A week later, I tried to initiate a conversation. "We need to talk about what I said." "You were very clear," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Message received." I didn't mean it to come out that harshly. I was frustrated, but I shouldn't have said it like that. "We're honest, I appreciate the honesty." But his tone said he appreciated nothing. I'd wounded him in a way I was beginning to understand couldn't be easily fixed. I tried apologizing several more times over the next weeks. Each time, Ryan accepted the apology with the same cool politeness and changed nothing about his behavior. He came home from work, made dinner or picked up takeout, asked about my day in the tone you'd use with a roommate. We were living parallel lives in the same apartment. The worst part was bedtime. We'd gotten ready silently, climbed into bed on our respective sides and lay there in the dark, not touching. The space between us felt like miles. I'd reach out sometimes, testing, and he'd give me a brief, brotherly pat before rolling away. I was getting exactly what I'd complained about, no disappointing sex, but I'd never felt more rejected in my life. At least before, he was trying. Now he'd completely withdrawn, and I was starting to panic. Here's what I haven't told anyone. The part that makes me look even worse, I didn't actually think the sex was that disappointing. It wasn't ideal, no, but it wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that I'd found something that made me question everything about Ryan. And instead of addressing it directly, I'd used our intimacy issues as a weapon, a way to hurt him because I was hurting. 3 months before that fight, I'd been looking for our insurance cards in Ryan's desk drawer. I found a prescription bottle instead. Lexapro, an antidepressant I had no idea he was taking. I stood there holding the bottle, my mind racing. Ryan had never mentioned depression, never said he was struggling, never told me he'd started medication. The prescription was 4 months old. He'd been dealing with this alone while I'd been spiraling about our sex life. I should have talked to him immediately. Asked him how he was doing, why he hadn't felt safe telling me, how I could support him. That's what a good wife would do. Instead, I put the bottle back and said nothing. Because acknowledging it meant acknowledging that our intimacy problems probably had nothing to do with me, nothing to do with attraction or desire. They were a side effect of medication he needed to function, to manage an illness he was suffering through in silence. And if I acknowledged that, I'd have to face what it said about me, that I'd made his medical issue all about my ego. So I carried this secret, watching him struggle, watching us struggle, and saying nothing. When he'd apologize after disappointing encounters, I knew why it was happening. I knew it wasn't his fault. And I still let him feel inadequate because some part of me was angry that he hadn't trusted me enough to share what he was going through. The night I finally exploded at him, I knew about the medication. I knew my criticism was hitting a man who was already dealing with depression, already feeling diminished. I knew exactly how much damage those words would do. I told myself I was creating a crisis to force the conversation we needed to have. But really, I was punishing him for shutting me out, for making me feel unwanted, for being imperfect in ways I couldn't control. After that fight, Ryan withdrew completely. And I couldn't find a way to fix it without admitting I'd known about his medication all along, without revealing that my honest frustration was actually calculated cruelty. I tried everything else first. I apologized repeatedly for my delivery. I suggested therapy again, even made the appointment myself. Ryan said he'd think about it, then never confirmed he'd go. I bought his favorite foods, tried to create opportunities for us to reconnect. Nothing worked. My friend Jessica finally confronted me over coffee. "What's going on with you and Ryan? He looks miserable every time I see him." "We're going through a rough patch," I said vaguely. "Did something specific happen?" I told her a sanitized version, that I'd criticized him about our sex life, that he'd shut down, that I couldn't reach him anymore. Jessica's expression shifted from sympathetic to judgmental. "You criticized him about sex, how he performs." "It was a legitimate issue. Becca, that's like the #1 thing you never do. That's ego death territory for guys. Of course he shut down. So I'm just supposed to be unsatisfied forever. You're supposed to approach it with sensitivity. Make it about connection, about seeing a doctor together, anything but making it about his performance." Jessica shook her head. "I'm surprised he's still talking to you at all." Her judgment stung because I knew she was right. And I still couldn't tell her the full truth, that I'd known exactly what I was doing when I said it. The next week, Ryan's sister called me. "What did you do to my brother? What did he tell you?" "He won't tell me anything specific, just says you're having problems and he's not sure you can fix them. He sounds broken, Becca. I've never heard him like this. I made a mistake. I said something cruel and I'm trying to fix it." "Then fix it. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve whatever you're putting him through." I wanted to scream that he'd hidden his depression from me, that he'd been pulling away for months before I said anything. But I couldn't, because I was the one who'd weaponized his vulnerability. Ryan started coming home later from work. When I asked about it, he said he was busy on a project. But I checked our credit card statements and saw charges from bars near his office. He was drinking alone rather than coming home to me. I tried one more time to bridge the gap. I made his favorite dinner, put on music we used to love, tried to create the right atmosphere for a real conversation. "I miss you," I said when we sat down to eat. "I'm right here. You know what I mean? I miss us, the way we used to be." Ryan set down his fork. "The way we used to be. I didn't know I was disappointing you. Now I do. That changes things." I was wrong to say it like that. I was frustrated and I lashed out. "But you meant it. You've been dissatisfied with me, with us, probably for a long time. You just finally said it out loud." "That's not," I stopped myself, because it was partly true. I had been dissatisfied, just not for the reasons he thought. "I'm trying here, Ryan. I'm apologizing. I'm making an effort. You're just punishing me." "I'm protecting myself," he said quietly. "You told me I'm not good enough for you. I heard you. I'm just making sure you don't have to keep being disappointed. By never touching me again, by shutting me out completely. Would you prefer I keep trying and failing, keep giving you more reasons to judge me?" The conversation spiraled into our first real fight since the original incident. I accused him of being passive-aggressive. He accused me of being cruel and impatient. We both said things we'd regret, and he ended up leaving, saying he was staying at his friend Mark's place. He was gone for 3 days. During that time, I barely slept. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text. I imagined him telling Mark everything, Mark telling him to leave me, the whole friend group turning against me. When he came back, he was different. Calmer but also more distant, like he'd made some kind of decision. "I think we should separate," he said. "Not divorce, just some space. I'll stay with Mark for a while and we can figure out what we want." "I don't want space, I want to fix this." "Then you should have thought about that before you eviscerated me in our bed." The word eviscerated hit me hard. That's how he'd experienced my criticism, as evisceration, and I didn't, knowing he was already struggling with depression. "Please don't go," I said. "Let's try therapy or medication or anything, just don't leave." "Medication?" His eyes narrowed. "Why would you bring up medication?" Slipped. The word had come out without thinking, revealing I knew more than I'd let on. "I just meant like couples therapy, or if you wanted to see a doctor about the physical stuff." "How long have you known?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "Known what? Don't play dumb, Becca. You found my medication. How long have you known?" My silence answered the question. "Months," he said, not a question. "You've known for months that I'm dealing with depression, that the medication affects things, and you said nothing. You just let me feel like shit about myself while you kept this secret." "You kept it secret first. You never told me you were depressed. You never said you were struggling." "Because I was ashamed." His voice cracked. "Because I thought I could handle it on my own and I didn't want you to see me as weak. And I was right to worry, wasn't I? Because the second you had ammunition, you used it against me." "That's not fair. You called me disappointing, Becca. You knew I was on medication that affects sexual function, you knew I was depressed, and you still chose that word. That specific, soul-crushing word." He was right. I'd chosen that word carefully, precisely because I knew how deeply it would cut. "I was angry," I whispered. "You shut me out and I was angry and hurt, and I wanted you to hurt too." "Well, congratulations, mission accomplished." He grabbed his keys. "I'm going to Mark's. I'll come by this weekend for more of my stuff." Ryan, please, you don't get to beg now. You made your choice when you decided to wound me instead of help me. He left. I sat on the couch crying, knowing I destroyed something I couldn't rebuild. Over the next week I spiraled. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus at work. I kept replaying every moment, every choice I'd made. My friend group started fracturing. Jessica had apparently told others a version of events, and suddenly people were taking sides. I made the mistake of posting something vague on social media. Sometimes honesty in relationships is punished instead of appreciated. Within hours, someone who knew the situation posted a response calling me out for playing victim. The comments exploded. People I barely knew were weighing in, calling me toxic, abusive, emotionally manipulative. Someone created a whole thread on Reddit about partners who destroy their spouse's sexual confidence. I was pretty sure it was about me, though details were changed. My sister called. Mom told me you and Ryan are separated. What happened? I told her my side, leaving out the medication part because I was still trying to protect some version of myself. Let me get this straight, she said. You criticized him about sex, he pulled away, and now you're mad he's protecting himself? It's more complicated than that, is it? Because it sounds like you were cruel. He responded by creating boundaries, and you're shocked he won't just forgive you. You don't understand what I was dealing with, then explain it to me. What was so terrible that you had to destroy his confidence? I couldn't answer. Because the real answer was that I'd been dealing with my own ego, my own insecurity, and I'd prioritized that over his mental health. Ryan came by that weekend to get his things. I'd hoped we could talk, maybe find some path forward. Instead, he brought Mark with him, clearly as a buffer. I need you to tell me the truth about something, Ryan said while packing his clothes. Did you tell people about our sex life? About my problems? Just Jessica. I needed someone to talk to. And Jessica told others, and now it's all over social media with details only you would know. My stomach dropped. I didn't know she'd. It doesn't matter. Everyone knows now. My coworkers know. My family knows. I can't even go to the gym without wondering if people are judging me. I'm so sorry. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry it backfired. You're not sorry for what you did. He zipped his suitcase. My therapist says you're a narcissist, that everything you've done has been about your ego, not our marriage. You're seeing a therapist? I started right after you criticized me. Figured I needed professional help to deal with being such a disappointment. The bitterness in his voice was like a knife. This was what I'd done, turned a kind, confident man into someone who talked about himself with such self-loathing. I found your medication because I was looking for our insurance cards, I said desperately. I should have talked to you immediately, but I didn't know how. And the longer I waited, the harder it got. I was wrong, I know I was wrong, but I was scared too. Scared of what? Scared that you didn't trust me enough to tell me. Scared that I wasn't a safe person for you. Scared that maybe you were right not to trust me given what I did with that information. It was the most honest I'd been through this whole mess. For a moment I thought it might break through. Instead, Ryan just looked sad. Yeah. You weren't safe. I was right not to trust you. And that's the saddest part of all this. My instinct to protect myself from you was correct. He left with Mark. I was alone in our apartment, surrounded by the gaps where his things used to be. The next few weeks were a blur of crying, overthinking, and trying to control damage I'd already done. I deactivated my social media after the comments got too vicious. I stopped hanging out with our friend group because the judgment was too heavy. I threw myself into therapy finally. My therapist was less sympathetic than I'd hoped. You saw evidence of his depression and used it against him, she said in our second session. That's a significant breach of trust. I didn't use it against him intentionally. You criticized his sexual performance knowing it was affected by antidepressants. That's textbook intentional harm, even if you didn't consciously frame it that way. So what do I do now? You accept that you can't fix this with apologies. You can only work on understanding why you made those choices and ensure you don't repeat the pattern. I want him back though. I want to save my marriage. Why? Because you love him or because you can't stand that he's the one who left? The question haunted me. Did I want Ryan back or did I just want to not be the villain in this story? I tried writing him a letter, pouring out everything, my fear, my insecurity, my shame about what I'd done. I explained about finding the medication, about being too scared to bring it up, about making his illness about my ego. I apologized for all of it, asked if we could start over. He responded via email, I appreciate you being honest, but it doesn't change what happened. I need to focus on my own healing now. I'll be in touch about next steps for the separation. Next steps sounded ominous, like divorce steps. My mom called around this time, having heard from my sister. Your father and I didn't work out for a lot of reasons, but one of them was that we didn't know how to be kind to each other when things got hard. Don't make my mistakes. I'm trying not to, but I think I already did. Then you learn from it. You can't undo it, but you can learn. I wanted to scream that learning didn't help if I'd already destroyed my marriage in the process. Ryan's friend Mark reached out surprisingly. We met for coffee, and I expected him to berate me. Instead, he was oddly sympathetic. Look, Ryan's my best friend and what you did was messed up, Mark said. But he's not blameless either. He shut you out for months. He hid major health information. Yet you responded badly, but you were working with incomplete information and a lot of hurt. You're the first person who said that. Most people don't know the full story. They just know you criticized him about sex and now he's devastated. That's a compelling villain narrative. I am the villain, though. Maybe you're both just people who hurt each other and don't know how to fix it. Mark's words gave me the first bit of hope I'd felt in weeks. Maybe this wasn't irredeemable. Maybe we could both own our parts and find a way back. I reached out to Ryan again, asking if we could meet to talk. He agreed reluctantly. We met at a neutral coffee shop. He looked thinner, tired. The guilt hit me fresh. Thank you for meeting me, I said. Mark said you had something important to say. I do. I want to take full responsibility for what I did, not the halfway apologies where I blame my delivery or say I was frustrated. I was cruel. I weaponized your vulnerability. I prioritized my ego over your well-being, and I'm sorry. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. I appreciate that. Is there any chance we can work through this? Actual therapy, both of us being honest, starting from scratch. I don't know if I can trust you again, Becca. Every time we'd have a conflict, I'd wonder if you were storing ammunition to use later. I can't live like that. I wouldn't do that again. I've learned. You've learned because you got caught, because I left, not because you suddenly developed empathy for what I was going through. He wasn't wrong. If he hadn't found out about the medication, would I have ever come clean? Or would I have kept using our intimacy issues as a weapon? I don't know how to fix this, I admitted. I don't know what you need from me. I need time. I need to trust myself again before I can even think about trusting you. How much time? I don't know, maybe forever. That word forever hit me like ice water. This might actually be over. My marriage might actually end because I couldn't handle my own insecurity with any grace. We parted awkwardly. No hug, no touch, just a polite goodbye that felt like a funeral. The separation became official. Ryan moved into his own apartment. We divided our belongings with painful civility. Our friends openly chose sides, most chose his. I couldn't blame them. Work became my refuge, the one place where people didn't know the details of my failure. But even there, I felt the weight of what I'd done. A coworker mentioned her husband starting antidepressants, and I had to excuse myself to cry in the bathroom, thinking about how differently I should have handled Ryan's medication. 3 months into the separation, I started dating someone I met through a work conference. Nothing serious, just coffee and conversation. He was nice, attentive, everything Ryan had been in the beginning. But I couldn't stop comparing them. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd lost and why. The new guy complimented me, and I wondered if he was just performing, if he'd eventually shut down too. I was broken in ways I didn't know how to fix. I broke things off after a few weeks. He was confused. I thought this was going well, but I couldn't explain that I was still in love with my husband and probably always would be. Ryan started dating too. I found out through social media before I'd fully deactivated everything. Photos of him with a woman named Claire, both of them smiling. He looked happy, lighter. The jealousy was acid in my throat, but underneath it was something else, relief. Relief that he was healing, that he could still be happy, that I hadn't permanently destroyed him. I sent him one final message. I saw your dating. I'm happy for you. You deserve someone who treats you better than I did. I'm sorry for everything. He didn't respond, which I understood. My therapist asked how I felt about his new relationship. Like I'm watching the life I could have had if I'd been a better person. You can still be a better person, just not with him. That was the hardest truth to accept, that growth and healing didn't mean I got Ryan back. It meant I became someone who wouldn't make the same mistakes in the next relationship with the next person. The divorce papers came 6 months after we separated. Ryan had filed. I signed them without fighting, knowing I had no right to contest. We met one last time to finalize things with the lawyers. Professional, cordial strangers who used to share a bed. I hope you find what you're looking for, he said at the end. I hope you're finding happiness with Claire. I am. She's kind. The implication hung there, she's kind, unlike you. I nodded, accepting the judgment. For what it's worth, I really am sorry, not just sorry it ended, but sorry for my part in ending it. I know. And I'm sorry too for shutting you out, for not trusting you with my depression, for my part in our problems. We both failed each other. It was the closest we'd come to mutual understanding, and it came at the end of everything. Now it's been a year since that night I called him disappointing. Ryan married Claire 6 months ago, I heard through mutual friends. They seem happy. He seems at peace in a way he never looked with me toward the end. I'm still single, still in therapy, still working through why I chose cruelty when I could have chosen compassion. My therapist says I have a pattern of pushing people away when they get too close, of testing their loyalty until they break. She says it comes from my parents' divorce, from learning early that people leave. But understanding the pattern doesn't undo the damage. I destroyed my marriage because I couldn't handle my husband's vulnerability with the care it deserved. I saw his weakness and struck at it instead of protecting it. People still think I'm the villain who destroyed a good man over sexual performance. They're not entirely wrong. But what they don't know is that the performance issue was a symptom of something I already knew about and chose to weaponize. They don't know I lied when I said the sex was disappointing. It wasn't the sex that disappointed me. It was that he didn't trust me with his truth, which made me feel small and unimportant. So I made him feel small and unimportant in return. I'm telling this story now because I saw Ryan yesterday. I was at the grocery store and he was there with Claire and a baby. They have a baby. He's a father now, living the life we talked about having together. He saw me too. We made eye contact across the produce section. For a moment I thought he might ignore me. Instead, he gave me a small nod, an acknowledgement that we'd both survived the wreckage. I nodded back and turned away, tears streaming down my face by the time I reached my car. I told him his performance was disappointing and I lost everything. But the real story is that I knew why he was struggling, and I used that knowledge as a weapon because my ego mattered more than his well-being. I watched him suffer in silence with depression, and instead of offering support, I offered criticism designed to cut deepest. Was I the villain? Probably. Was I also hurt and scared and flawed? Also yes. Does that excuse what I did? Absolutely not. I'm putting this out there because I need someone to understand the full picture, even if understanding doesn't mean forgiveness. I need to own what I did, not the sanitized version where I was just too honest at the wrong time, but the truth where I weaponized my husband's mental illness because I couldn't handle feeling unwanted. So now you know everything. Judge me as harshly as you want. I've already judged myself more harshly than you possibly could.